Friday, 5 p.m. Jerusalem time. From NBC Studios. This is NBC Journal with Bassam Zahir and Sana Abu Samra.
Palestinian shot and injured at an Israeli checkpoint north of West Bank.
Journalists and medics among 46 Palestinians injured at Gaza border.
U.S. Congresswoman proposes cutting Israeli aid.
Hello and welcome again. Israeli occupation forces opened fire and injured a Palestinian at an army checkpoint in the north of the West Bank after he allegedly attempted to carry out a stabbing attack, according to the Palestinian security sources. Occupation forces shot the Palestinian, whose condition was not immediately known but claimed to be critical at Zatara checkpoint south of Nablus, and then detained him.
A Palestinian worker from the northern West Bank town of Qabatia fell from a high place and died during an Israeli police chase in the Arab town of Arabat al-Baltuf. Inside Israel, it said Palestinian security sources. Muhammad Majd Kamil died after he fell from high as he was trying to get away from the Israeli police, local sources said. Hundreds of Palestinians work in Israel without a permit, and often police chase them and detain them before sending them back to the occupied West Bank, where work is more scarce than in Israel and pay is much less.
A Palestinian youth was seriously injured in the southern West Bank town of Tqor when shot in the thigh by Israeli occupation forces, according to a local official and Palestinian security sources. Town residents clashed with Israeli occupation forces following the funeral of a woman who was hit and killed earlier in the day by an Israeli settler driver who escaped the scene, said the town director Taysir Abu Mihr. The occupation forces fired rubber-coated metal bullets as well as tear gas and stun grenades at the protesters, injuring a 16-year-old boy in the thigh by a live bullet, and he was taken to hospital in Bethlehem. Medical sources described the injury as critical, saying the bullet hit a main artery causing heavy bleeding.
At least 46 Palestinians, including medics and journalists, were injured when Israeli occupation forces attacked hundreds of protesters taking part in the weekly Greater March of Return protest at Gaza-Israeli border, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent. The forces fired live bullets and rubber-coated steel rounds at the protesters who gathered at many encampments along the border, injuring 46 Palestinians, including 5 medics and 4 journalists. A child was directly hit by a tear gas canister in his head, and his condition was described as critical. Some of the wounded were moved to a hospital and others were treated in the field hospitals.
Israel's dual-use goods system hampers the development and growth of Palestinian industry and imposes heavy costs on the Palestinian manufacturer due to its complexities and requirements that violate international stipulations and are imposed under the pretext of security and environment, said the Minister of Economy Khalid Osaidi. The dual use of goods applies to many industries and plays a major role in the production inputs of local economy, said Osaidi. There are universal conditions for their use, but the Israeli conditions are cumbersome for the Palestinian manufacturer and cost him losses while restricting industrial growth and increases cost of manufactured goods. Israel prevents entry of more than 100 types of raw materials into the Palestinian market used in the leather, construction, food, engineering, metal, textile, sewing, aluminum, chemicals, metal equipment and spare parts industry.
A Palestinian prisoner has been held in isolation in Israeli jails for over 2 years, said the detainees and ex-detainees on commission on Tuesday. It said 23-year-old Yusuf al-Shinawi from Haifa in Israel has been placed in isolation in Megiddo prison since March 2017 in very difficult living conditions. The commission said in a statement that Israeli prison services isolated Shinawi from the rest of the political prisoners after claiming that he was a danger to the security of Israel. He is serving life sentence plus 20 years on charges of resistance. Shinawi was put in isolation 2 months after his arrest. The isolation order is for 6 months and has been renewed ever since. The current isolation order ends in September.
The Palestinian cabinet, headed by Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayeh, praised during its weekly meeting held in Ramallah the outcomes of the Arab Foreign Ministers' emergency meeting and called upon world countries to withdraw the passports of their citizens residing in illegal colonial settlements and take appropriate legal measures against them. The cabinet also praised the final communique of the emergency meeting of Arab Foreign Ministers at the Arab League's headquarters in Cairo, held upon the demand and presence of President Abbas.
A new report documenting Israeli human rights violations of Palestinian rights in Jerusalem was issued by the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor. The report covers cases of human raids, searches, demolitions, travel bans, explosions, and other violations during March 2019. The Trump administration's decision in late 2017 gave the green light to the Israeli authorities to continue escalate their flagrant violations against the Palestinian people in general and those who occupied Jerusalem in particular, an attempt to obliterate the Arab, Christian, and Islamic identities from the Holy City, the report stressed. The report documents cases where Israel deliberately shut down social and political activities and events organized in Jerusalem, revealing that the long-term contribution would be erasing the Palestinian identity from the public scene in Jerusalem.
Extremist Jewish settlers stormed on Monday Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied city of Jerusalem and performed religious rituals, provoking tension in the Muslim holy compound. Israeli police escorted the fanatics and protected them as they performed Jewish prayers near Bab al-Rahma, despite several attempts by Al-Aqsa Mosque's Palestinian guards to prevent them from doing so. Jewish fanatic groups that call themselves Temple Mount Faithful called on their supporters to flock to Al-Aqsa Mosque during their Passover holiday this week in order to claim it for themselves, an act that constantly provokes the feeling of the Muslim worshippers who consider it an intrusion on their holy place.
The Arab League Council at the level of the foreign ministers affirmed the commitment of the Arab countries to the support of the budget of the State of Palestine in a statement issued at the end of the extraordinary session held in Cairo. The ministers pledged to implement the decision of the Tunis summit to activate a financial safety network of $100 billion per month to meet the political and financial pressures facing the Palestinian government. The Council also stressed that such a deal would not succeed in achieving lasting and comprehensive peace in the Middle East if it did not guarantee the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, first and foremost their right to self-determination and the establishment of an independent and sovereign state and 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital.
Ambassador for the Palestinian Affairs and representative of Japan to Palestine visited Beit Duqo village, northwest of occupied Jerusalem, to celebrate the completion of the project funded by the government of Japan through Japan's grant assistance for grassroots human security projects, a press release said on Sunday. Palestinian farmers used a grant of $87,500 to replace the old compost production machines and reconstruct the current compost production plant of Beit al-Karma Farmers Union in Beit Duqo. This project aims at increasing the compost production of BFU from 600,000 to around 2 million litres to stably provide cheaper compost to the farmers in Beit Duqo and its surroundings. About 360 households benefit from the project.
Israel occupation forces sealed off 3 entrances to the village of Sebastia, north of Nablus, the occupied West Bank, as they prepare to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Passover, also known as Pesach, according to the mayor of Sebastia, Muhammad Azim. Israeli occupation forces stormed the village of Sebastia at dawn and placed large cement cubes to completely block off the 3 entrances to the village of secure and entry of settlers in Sebastia archaeological site to celebrate the Jewish holiday of Passover. The mayor noted that the village is subjected to almost daily violations by Israeli occupation forces, including raids, harassments, and arrests in an attempt to take over the archaeological site.
The health conditions of 5 Palestinian administrative detainees in Israeli prisons are deteriorating and is requiring effective procedures to save their lives, said the Palestinian Authority's Detainees Affairs Commission. The commission said Hussam Ruzi, Mohammed Tabanja, Khaled Faraj, Hussam Awawi and Auda Hroub have been on hunger strike for several days in protest of their illegal detention by Israeli authorities without charge or trial. Israel's widely condemned policy of administrative detention allows detention of Palestinians without charge or trial for renewable intervals, usually ranging between 3 and 6 months, based on undisclosed evidence that even a detainee's lawyer is barred from viewing.
Palestinian political prisoner in Israeli jails, Muhanna Ziyud, completes 15 years behind Israeli prison bars, said the Palestinian Prisoner Affairs. Ziyud, who comes from the town of Sila al-Harthiyya in the occupied West Bank, was arrested in April 2004 and was sentenced to 25 years in jail for resisting the Israeli occupation. He has been denied family visits at many times by Israeli prison authorities. Israeli authorities are still incarcerating more than 6,000 Palestinians and Arab prisoners for resisting its occupation of the occupied Palestinian territories.
Riyad Mansour, the permanent observer of Palestine to the United Nations, chaired last week a series of high-profile meetings in the UN as chairman of the Group of 77 and China. During the meetings, Mansour stressed the importance of international trade as a catalyst for sustainable development, calling on some countries to reverse the coercive and unilateral economic measures by that have badly affected international trade. He also has pointed to the danger of illegal cash flows and tax evasion, which has a significant impact on developing countries, especially African countries, where the volume of illegal cash flows is estimated to be $200 billion.
A coalition of 17 other international aid organizations led by An-Najah recently expressed their support for a resolution recently introduced in the U.S. Senate calling for a restoration of humanitarian aid to the West Bank and Gaza. In a press release issued by Sen Markley's office, the senator noted that thousands of individuals are facing dire health and economic conditions in the West Bank and Gaza. An-Najah was previously warned of the devastating impact of the aid cuts on An-Najah's ongoing and planned projects in the West Bank and Gaza, including a half-built school in the Beit Lahem area. Specifically, the resolution urges the executive branch expend before the end of fiscal year 2019 all bilateral assistance to the West Bank and Gaza that Congress appropriated for such assistance in fiscal year 2018.
U.S. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has proposed the U.S. cut military and economic aid worth $3 billion a year from Israel in response to the re-election of Benjamin Netanyahu as Prime Minister. I think these are part of conversations we are having in our caucus, but I think that we are really seeing it as an ascent of authoritarianism across the world. I think that Netanyahu is a Trump-like figure, she said during an interview with Yahoo News podcast. Ocasio-Cortez explained that there are many ways to protect the Palestinians from Israeli violations, including a bill proposed by Democratic Minnesota Representative Betty McCollum that would prohibit U.S. aid to Israel from being used to detain Palestinian children in the West Bank.
And now moving on to the An-Najah National University News.
Nominating Professor Mahmoud Matar to be member of the Supreme Council of the Arab Board of Health Specializations. The Council of Arab Ministers of Health has recently nominated Professor Muhammad Matar, staff member at An-Najah's Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences and physician at An-Najah National University Hospital, to be member of the Supreme Council of the Arab Board of Health Specializations. The nomination has been made during the 94th Council session held in March 2018. Professor Matar was nominated for his distinguished academic and clinical performance on the local and Arab levels. He has more than 60 research papers published by prominent international journals. He also presented 100 papers in scientific international conferences and obtained several international awards.
An-Najah student discovers a new treatment for cancer and microbial infections. The research findings are of great importance and open up prospects for other new research, especially the findings about the Nicotiana tabacum roots. Ms. Speh said that she keep trying, separate these natural compounds from those extracts, then develop it into a pharmaceutical form that can be used in prevention and treatment. She also hopes to continue her doctoral studies and explore more about what nature and wild plants, as well as offer great achievements to humanity. These are our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details, visit nn.ps.
Thank you for watching.